this meeting to order. Welcome, everyone, to number 68 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Government Operations and Estimates. The only committee that matters, also known as the mighty OGO. Now, pursuant to Standing Order 81-4, and the order of reference adopted by the House on Wednesday, February 15, 2023, the committee is meeting to consider the main estimates 2023-2024. Before we turn things over to the Minister, colleagues, we will be voting on the estimates today. There's 23 departments we're voting on, or 23 votes. I'd like unanimous consent, please, that we group the votes by department. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Minister, welcome back. It is good to have you. I understand you'll be doing a 5-minute opening statement.
Chair,
wonderful.
I will indeed.
I will turn things over to you and just start off by recognizing the mighty OGO would be wonderful. For all of our viewers at home, go ahead, Minister.
Thank you so much. Bonjour. Tout d'abord, je tiens à souligner que nous sommes.
First of all, I would like to point out that we are meeting today on the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe peoples.
Estimates for public services and procurement are Paul Thompson, Deputy Minister, Wojciech Zielonka, Assistant Deputy Minister and Chief Financial Officer, and Simon Page, Assistant Deputy Minister, Defence and Marine Procurement Branch. And from Shared Services Canada, Sunny Perron, President, and Scott Davis, Chief Financial Officer. In order to support our activities, PSPC is requesting a net amount of $4.3 billion through the main estimates. This is a net decrease of $304 million from the previous year's main estimates. Monsieur le Président, veillez à ce que les approvisionnements.
Mr. Chair, ensuring that government procurement is fair, open, and competitive is one of the cornerstones of our work at Public Services and Procurement Canada. We serve Canadians each day by supplying the necessary goods and services to facilitate the daily operations of our government.
Fulfilling Canada's defence policy commitments through purchases of top-of-the-line equipment for our members of the Canadian Armed Forces, who play a crucial role in defending Canadians and supporting global security. We will continue working with our partners to advance Canada's national shipbuilding strategy, which supports the Royal Canadian Navy and Canadian Coast Guard, while at the same time revitalizing Canada's shipbuilding industry. In addition to that, our national shipbuilding strategy is creating jobs for hardworking Canadians and has contributed approximately $1.93 billion annually to Canada's gross domestic product between 2012 and 2022. At the beginning of April, we were proud to sign a groundbreaking agreement between our government and Chantier Davy to introduce the Quebec shipyard as the third strategic partner under the NSS. This will allow us to begin negotiations to build multiple icebreakers. Mr. Chair, as this committee knows, Public Services and Procurement Canada is also the steward of the government's real property holdings. As such, we plan to spend $3.4 billion on property and infrastructure activities. Much of that amount contains funds to maintain federal government buildings and bridges for the benefit of all. Entre autres, ce financement nous permet.
Among other things, this funding will allow us to advance important projects such as the rehabilitation of the historic parliamentary precinct, which includes the redevelopment of the Block 2 redevelopment project and the ongoing renovation of the Centre Block, the most complex heritage rehabilitation project ever seen in this country.
Also support greening government initiatives for federal property and infrastructure through the use of clean energy and by reducing waste and greenhouse gases. To date, the department has already realized a 54% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, surpassing the 2016 to 2019 Federal Sustainable Development Strategy target of 40% by 2030. To tackle climate change, our government is committed to power federal buildings with 100% renewable energy by 2025. Mr. Chair, the main estimates also include $318.7 million for payments and accounting initiatives, which includes pay administration operations. My portfolio also includes Shares Services Canada, which plays a vital role in supporting government operations and the digital delivery of programs and services to Canadians. As shown in its departmental plan, SSC's available funding for 2023-2024 will be $2.6 billion, excluding $853 million in revenue. With the approval of the 2023-2024 main estimates, we are seeking to decrease SSC's reference levels by $26.9 million compared to last year's main estimates. The change in SSC reference level can be attributed to a combination of factors including a net transfer amount of $34.4 million to other departments, a reduction of $329.3 million in other adjustments related to changes in funding profiles for multi-year initiatives and projects, $136.4 million in new funding for IT services and projects, $194.9 million in reprofiled funding from previous years, and $5.5 million increase in statutory appropriations. Mr. Chair, the funding being requested in the main estimates for both departments will strengthen our ability to meet our obligations to Canadians. Je répondrai maintenant avec plaisir.
I would now be pleased to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. We'll start with 6 minutes with Mrs. Block, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, for joining us today. Thank you to the departmental officials who have also come to hopefully answer the questions that we have in regards to the mains. Minister, the home of the Prime Minister, 24 Sussex, is in the news as it has fallen into a state of disrepair and is currently uninhabitable, as we all know. An article this morning from CBC stated that the National Capital Commission has started construction on 24 Sussex, even though the government has still not decided what should be done with the property. According to a Global News article, the government has delayed a decision on the future of 24 Sussex. The NCC's board chairman wrote a letter to your predecessor, Minister Tassi, yet no action has been taken by this government or by your ministry. Does the government, does your ministry have any plans to deal with 24 Sussex?
Ms. Block. And as you've alluded to, the National Capital Commission has been making some efforts to basically ameliorate all the problems with 24 Sussex Drive. In other words, removal of asbestos, removal of some old mechanical electrical systems that are in place. It's considered a safety issue at this point, and that work has been ongoing over the last couple of months. I do want to point out that the National Capital Commission is obviously a Crown agency at arm's length from government, but of course we are having significant dialogue in terms of developing a plan for the future of 24 Sussex Drive, and we are working with them on that endeavour. Just to point out that 24 Sussex Drive has had not seen any significant investment in over 60 years. And so what is being done now is simply for the safety of the property. And going forward, we will be exploring opportunities in the future.
Thank you. So I did read the articles, and it stated that what needed to be done would have to be done, regardless of what the future of 24 Sussex may be. Have there been any conversations in regards to what the future will be of 24 Sussex?
Well, at this point in time, we're exploring a number of different options. As you've read in the media, the National Capital Commission has been exploring different options, and there have been conversations with our officials in terms of what those might look like. But there has yet to be any decision by Cabinet taken going forward.
Who owns 24 Sussex?
I presume it is the National Capital Commission. They are essentially responsible as a Crown agency of the government.
Okay, thank you very much. Minister, the last time you were here, you noted that the Next Generation Human Resources and Pay NextGen system was undergoing some pilot testing. You were pleased to provide us with an update at that time when we were asking you questions around the Phoenix pay system and all of the issues with that. Could you give us a bit of an update on where things are at with the next-gen system?
Well, as you will probably recall, we are piloting the system with 3 different departments. As I understand it, those pilots are being monitored very, very closely in terms of obviously accuracy, while we're maintaining the Phoenix system to actually pay employees. I can probably hand over to President Perron for a little more detail on some of how those pilots are progressing. But as you can imagine, we're being extremely cautious. We want to make sure that any movement over to next gen has to be seamless and flawless.
We are finishing the testing phase with these 3 departments to make sure that the commercial grade solution that we are testing can meet the requirement of the federal government operation for HR and pay going forward, identifying any gaps, any changes that will be required in the way we manage HR and pay if we want to leverage this kind of solution, leading to conclusion on the payment accuracy, the ability of these systems to provide timely and accurate pay, and making sure we can address some of the complex scenario that exists in the federal public service. As you can see, there is a number of employment groups, and some have very, very complex pay and HR environments. So we are finishing the testing this summer. Hopefully, by the end of the calendar year, we are going to come back with an assessment of how we can adapt to adopt such a solution in the future, what type of change we will have to make in order to create the conditions so we can leverage these commercial solutions in an effective way and not produce error, but produce accurate pay.
I can assure you that we are watching very carefully, and I'm sure our public service are as well, given all of the issues that they have had to deal with over the last number of years since the Liberal government decided to launch the Phoenix Pay system before it was actually ready. How much time do I have?
12 seconds.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Thompson, over to you, please, for 6.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome back to the committee to Minister and your officials, and thank you again for the wonderful announcement in my riding last week. It was a real pleasure to welcome you to St. John's East. Minister, when we speak about the national shipbuilding strategy, we often have major projects in mind, whether it's icebreakers or the announcement you mentioned in your opening remarks, Davie Shipyard as the 3rd shipyard under the NSS. While you were in Newfoundland and Labrador last week, you made that amazing announcement of $2.5 billion in funding for the renewal of Canadian Coast Guard's small vessel fleet. Could you elaborate on this market-moving announcement for the marine industry across Canada and what it represents for all provincial and territorial economies?
Well, thank you so much. And yes, it was indeed a pleasure to be in Newfoundland and Labrador last week to make the announcement, because what we're trying to do with this announcement is to ensure that there's a steady supply of new vessels, along with repairing and ongoing maintenance of these small vessels used by the Canadian Coast Guard. And so this will eliminate what has heretofore been sort of a boom and bust cycle of all of a sudden all the vessels being aged out and needing to replace a whole lot. So this is a really good plan to kind of ensure that those vessels that just need repair and can go out and do what they need to do maintain that service, and also obviously bring on new vessels as we need. So this is 61 new vessels, 34 search and rescue lifeboats, and another specialty vessel related to scientific research, and another group that are going to be what is called multi-mission vessels. So this opens the door for smaller shipyards. This is the type of work that is exactly what small, medium-sized shipyards can achieve. Many of them are already involved in repairing these vessels, these Coast Guard vessels, but it also gives the opportunity for them to actually bid on constructing some of these new vessels. And while I was in Newfoundland, you will recall we had the opportunity to visit Harbour Grace Ocean Enterprises, an example of one of these smaller shipyards, and I know there are many across the country, who are currently repairing Coast Guard vessels, but would be in the market potentially to bid on contracts to actually construct them. And it was really quite inspiring to see this very small town, Harbour Grace, a shipyard in the heart of the old village, with so many vessels under construction, obviously commercial vessels that this shipyard has been retained to construct, and the fact that 100 employees have steady employment in just from that one shipyard. So this is a tremendous boon to shipyards of this size across the country. We know it will contribute to, obviously, to the local economy, provide good jobs, lots of skilled trades involved, especially electricians. I think we were quite stunned to see the type of controls that are necessary in order to actually get these vessels out to sea. So it was a great announcement, very well received by both the Canadian Coast Guard and by the local shipyard we visited.
Thank you, and thank you for mentioning Harbour Grace, because it really, for me, it's a direct link to the impact on the local economy of announcements like this, and then certainly a local company in my riding that's involved with the design for the Irving shipyard. So again, you know, these contracts having direct impact across the country. We know government's been taking steps with the National Shipbuilding Strategy to supply Canadian Coast Guard with top-of-the-line equipment to keep waterways safe. Could you share some of the details of this investment with committee, please?
Well, it was really interesting to go to the operations center at the Canadian Coast Guard complex in St. John's because new technology has, and obviously we've been investing in this technology, have allowed the Coast Guard to have the most amazing maps that we saw, where all the icebergs are detailed within quadrants, because obviously navigation aid to vessels is one of the functions of the Canadian Coast Guard. The type of 24/7 response in terms of the potential for search and rescue operations was also very reassuring. It shows really the strength of our Canadian Coast Guard, the way they're progressing in their very important work, and also the investment that our government has been making to ensure that their activities go forward as they should to protect Canadians.
Thank you. How much time do I have, Mr. Chair?
14 seconds.
Oh, okay. I'll pass on my 14 seconds. So thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Thompson. Ms. Vignola, you have 6 minutes and 14 seconds from Ms. Thompson.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Jacek, Mr. Thompson, Ms. Lonka, Mrs. Page, Bianca, Mr. Davis, thank you for being here today. Ms. Jacek, we're very pleased in Greater Quebec City and Quebec in general. We're very pleased that Davy is finally going to be integrated into the National Shipbuilding Strategy. Everybody involved in the milieu who's worked on this file in the last 10 years is pleased with this news. Several people have worked in the shadows, but all are pleased with the outcome. This being said, Davy, you know as well as I do, represents 50% of the shipbuilding strength of Canada. In a roughly $100 billion budget, Quebec provides roughly 22% of the total funding for the National Shipbuilding Strategy. And Davy ends up with roughly 8% of contracts. Not contracts, rather, but funds. Will additional contracts be in the works?
We have an umbrella agreement in terms of the large shipyards, and that was the case with Chantier Davy. Within that umbrella contract, there's the opportunity clearly for Davy to have the opportunity to build numerous of these large vessels going forward. If you would like some of the details as to how that might happen, perhaps I can turn to the deputy.
Merci. Il y a déjà une contrat.
Thank you. There's already one contract for the ferries for Davy. There are two other vessels. Yes, but ferries are not part of the National Shipbuilding Strategy. I'm talking about National Shipbuilding Strategy contracts. Perhaps I could ask Simon to add to this. Yes, thank you for the question, Chair. The work plan at this time under the framework agreement includes the two Transport Canada ferries, which had initially been excluded from the framework agreement. But after the framework agreement, after it was signed, the two Transport Canada ships were integrated into the work plan. So the work plan now includes 9 vessels, the 2 ferries, 1 polar icebreaker, and the 6 program icebreakers for the Coast Guard program. If I can add something here, in terms of other elements and other components of the work plan, Chantier Davy is very busy with the third pillar, which is maintenance for naval and Coast Guard ships. So they will continue in a competitive environment to have access to that portfolio as well. Thank you. So if I understood you correctly, you're talking about roughly $8 billion invested for ships, ferries, and the icebreakers. At this time, slightly over $8.5 billion, which includes only the shipbuilding, and that will probably extend over, we think, 15 to 16 years. This does not include the funds for repair or other periods that could be added.
Une sonnette d'alarme a été sonnée.
Alarm bells were rung in Quebec, especially by Laval University and on the East Coast with the Rimouski Institut de la Mer. And with the Munson, certain icebreakers will be created, and they're saying they're going to replace the Edmondson, which is a hyper-specialized Arctic vessel, which we direly need. Can you guarantee us that the vessel which will replace it will be at least as efficient, if not more so, for our scientists, for knowledge of climate disruptions, particularly as they apply to the Arctic, and also for our protection of our coastal and offshore waters?
Of course, PSPC responds to the requirements of the purchasing department. So obviously they need to specify the kind of work that needs to be done, and then obviously PSPC goes out and obtains the necessary contractual arrangement in order to achieve what is required by the purchasing department. But perhaps, again, Simon, you could give us a little bit more on the direct question.
Oui, merci beaucoup.
Thank you for the question. The Minister has answered appropriately. The extent of the work and the unique aspects of the equipment on the ships and the specifications of the vessels themselves are truly with our client departments, in other words, Coast Guard and the Royal Canadian Navy. We try to provide the best strategies for procurement, and we develop the contracts. I can tell you that for the polar icebreaker project for the West Coast, we have started, and there is a promising design now.
Mr. Johns for 6 minutes, please.
Chair, and thank you, Minister, for being here, and to all the public servants for the important work you and your team do. Just back to Ms. Bloch's question, she had a really, good questions around 24 Sussex. When are we going to have a plan? Like, when are we going to know the details? I mean, you're spending more money. When are you going to put out a detailed plan so that Canadians know what's going to happen there and how you're going to spend their tax dollars on that site?
As we have said, the property is in the hands of the National Capital Commission. And so they will be bringing detailed plans to us as proposals that will be considered by Cabinet. I would say that I'm optimistic, and I'm just as impatient as you, Mr. Johns, to have some plan going forward in the very near future.
So near future, is there any timeline that you're going to share with us potentially so Canadians have a general idea of when they're going to know what the plan is? Because right now it's we've heard this.
Well, I keep inquiring as well.
Okay.
And I think, Mr. Deputy, within
The fall.
by the fall.
I'm going to reference some staffing numbers from PSPC's Human Resource Planning Summary and the Treasury Board's open data site here. You and I have talked about Phoenix a lot. Now, I'm talking about the four, quote, payments and accounts, quote, in PSPC summary that lists 4,792 FTEs for fiscal year 2022-2023. But that number drops to 2,438 for 2023-2024. That's about half as many employees. So even worse, the Treasury Board lists the number of workers for PSPC Federal Pay Administration as about 2,960 for 2021-2022, but the number for plan workers in 2023-2024 is only 761. That's about a quarter of last year's employees. So I'm concerned by this drastic reduction in public servants. And I mean, this is coming at a time, you know, about the backlog, the 209,000 transactions right now sitting in that backlog that are, you know, are public servants that are wrongfully waiting for. It's totally unacceptable. So this trend is that the number of backlog transaction is rising, not diminishing. So we're concerned as New Democrats. I can't see how the government will be able to pay its employees with a federal pay administration staff of over only 761 federal full-time workers. Minister, can you talk about your plan on outsourcing, and are you planning to outsource, you know, the contract or back to the departments for pay delivery? And maybe you can talk about what's being considered.
Mr. Johns, I think you need to be aware that actually we are adding employees to support the stabilization of Phoenix. I think the numbers you're referring to have something to do with an expiry of a certain number, but going forward, we are definitely adding employees. And so, again, perhaps the deputy can explain why it looks like they're being decreased, because they are being added.
Okay, just before he does, I just want to make sure that he's aware, and you know this, that Labour has been asking, the union's been asking department representatives repeatedly whether it's a mistake in these plans or whether they're accurate, you know, since the time that they've been announced, and haven't received a response. So maybe you can speak to them as well when you're speaking to me in your response.
So thank you for the question. So as the minister was suggesting, this is a result of a 3-year tranche of funding that expired at the end of the previous fiscal year. The budget 2023 announced new funding for pay administration. It's not yet in the main estimates, and consequently, it's that funding that is actually helping expand the pay center, and we've added 570 staff since last fall. And continue to augment. There were more added just in the last month, and we have another 150 or so planned for over the course of the summer, which is adding considerably to the capacity to get both at new intake in pay to keep up with the intake, but also to address backlog reduction.
Good to make sure that they're aware of what your plan is, because they're the most impacted. Many people are losing their homes still as a result of not being paid or now being overpaid and that money being called upon. As you know, one of the most significant procurements and proposed tax expenditures on PC's desk right now relates to new defense aircraft for the Royal Canadian Air Force. Many in Canadian aerospace and defense were alarmed to see that in March, PSPC announced the government's intent to sole source a new fleet of Canadian multi-mission aircraft from Boeing that are built in the United States, and the aircraft procurement process your department is undertaking is concerning because the Canadian government should be a champion for the Canadian aerospace and defense industry who are capable and ready to produce a next-generation multi-mission aircraft built by Canadians in Canada. So, Minister, why aren't you pushing for an open, transparent, tender that gives Canadian companies the chance to compete?
I would just want to be really clear that at this point in time, we have not committed Canada to purchasing the P-8A Poseidon. The project remains in what's called options analysis. Having said that, the Department of Defense has told us that at this point in time, the P-8A Poseidon is the only currently available aircraft that meets all of the Canadian multi-mission aircraft operational requirements. That's what they're telling us. But from the perspective of PSPC, we're still in what is called an options analysis.
I'm afraid that's our time, Mr. Johns. Ms. Cusi.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister, for being here today. What is the current status of the backlogs? How many cases exactly, please, at this moment? Correct.
I have something here. Heaven knows if it's completely up to date. But maybe you've probably got the numbers at your fingertips.
So the overall queue has approximately 400,000 transactions ready to be processed, but there's different categories of workload within that. There are 177,000 cases that are beyond our normal workload that would have a financial impact. So that's a subset of that overall queue of work. And as I indicated, there's significant new staffing that is coming on stream, and we've seen our capacity to process pay transactions increase by about 14% in the last year. So the addition of staff is adding considerably to our ability to manage intake as well as deal with backlog reduction.
Thank you. And my understanding is that you've recently changed the service level agreement so that the acceptable backlog is currently different than it was previously. Perhaps you could provide some insight to that for the committee to sort of explain to us the new service level agreement comparative to the previous service level agreement and how that looks in terms of resolving the case backload, please.
Again, I think that kind of detail is best from the deputy.
So I would note that we're committed to continuing to track in a consistent fashion for clarity how old definitions work. We do, though, look at new ways of examining the business in more detail. This idea of looking at workload beyond the normal workload. So there's a monthly intake that goes up and down from time to time, but the amount of intake that we're not processing that is beyond a normal workload is kind of what we're trying to shift the focus to, because there'll always be cases in the queue as part of our normal processing. So we're trying to actually add insights to the reporting, not diminish or change things that we've reported in the past.
Have you personally met with any of the vendors? Have you met with Ceridian? Have you met with CGI or EY personally? Okay, and why would that be the case? Why have you not met with them?
As far as I know, there's been no request for me to meet with them.
Okay, but you wouldn't want to have some interaction with them directly in terms of their ideas or concepts or visions for what the new pay system would look like, especially given the fiasco of the current system?
Perhaps President Perron can respond.
Mr. Chair, the reason why there is not really a value for the minister to meet with the vendor is that the vendor is testing with us a solution that has been already designed, that they are selling to thousands of businesses across the country and the world and also government. So it's not about designing a tool, it's about testing the tool they have and see how the complexity of the government of Canada can work with that tool. So it's really an experimentation. So meeting with the vendor at this point doesn't bring anything because we are not building something with them, we are testing their product. When we have the conclusion of the tests, at that time, when it's time to move ahead and implement or not, maybe there will be a value to have a Minister of the Crown meeting with the private sector on this. But at this time, they have been selected through a competitive process. They are actually doing the work on time, on budget with us. So there is no intervention that the Minister can do in that file that will inform more the outcome of the testing phase. So at this point, I even said to the vendor, I don't see the value for you to meet with the minister until we have finished our work and we can report back on the results and the capacity of your tool to serve well the government of Canada. Sorry for my English.
Thank you. I certainly, were I the minister, I would want to have initial conversations with all the vendors as to get an idea as to their vision, but I can appreciate that, Monsieur Perron. Thank you. Minister, what correspondence or discussions have your officials received from union representatives about NextGen and how the project is going? Have you received any correspondence from any of the unions that you'd like to share with the committee?
I have not personally received any that I'm aware of. Perhaps Deputy Thompson?
So I'm not aware of correspondence in particular, but we have regular engagement sessions. We have every 4 to 6 weeks a sit down with labor leaders on the current state of pay administration, and they're given updates on the NextGen project as well. So that's what I would note in terms of engagement.
They are eager for an implementation plan, Chair. Thank you very much.
Mr. Kusmirchuk, please, for 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, for joining us here today at OGO. I believe this is the 5th or 6th meeting, really, in just the last, I think, year and change. So I wanted to say thank you so much for coming to this committee once again and testifying. I wanted to ask you actually a question about the Canada Dental benefit. Obviously, our government is moving forward on this historic program. I know it's going to have a huge impact on communities across Canada. It's going to have a huge impact in communities like ours in Windsor-Tecumseh. There's a lot of children, a lot of seniors, a lot of persons, just residents in general, that simply do not have access to dental insurance. They do not have access to dental care, obviously, in our community and across the country. Can you please provide us with a bit of an update on the progress of the Canada Dental Benefit? And again, just curious, what is the role of PSPC in rolling that program out?
Well, thank you. That question, and yes, to pick up on something you alluded to, we know that a third of Canadians do not have dental insurance. So this is an important program, and as a physician, I can certainly say that oral health is a key component of overall health. I think we can all recognize that. We're working as PSPC very closely with Service Canada, with obviously the Ministry of Health itself, in terms of each of our roles in rolling out this program. Service Canada is going to be the first point of contact where people apply to potentially enroll. Health Canada is obviously putting together what needs to be covered by the third-party provider, and then we will be involved in actually working with the third-party provider, awarding the contract, and moving forward with a program that actually provides dental care for those uninsured Canadians within the financial bracket that they happen to be in. So at this point in time, initially we put out an invitation to qualify to third-party providers. We had a number of people interested. We brought that down to 3 who actually had the ability, the proven capacity to roll out a program of this size. So we are now working with the 3 suppliers and to identify precisely what is required of them. And we intend to, in fact, issue the RFP officially within the next week or so. So our intention, hopefully, is to have people beginning to be able to enroll towards the end of the year, the beginning of 2024, in that kind of time frame. We're hoping we can award the contract in the fall because we've been working very closely with these 3 who have passed the first invitation to qualify piece that are now in the running for the RFP. So we're getting closer. It's a big program. At the end of the day, it should reach some 1/3 of the Canadian population. So we're talking about 9.8 million individuals. So it is very ambitious, but I know the officials are working really hard to make sure it is done on time and appropriately.
I appreciate that very much, that update and that sense of urgency as well, too. And speaking with the local health unit just a couple weeks ago, they were saying that their wait times to provide dental care for seniors that are uninsured is literally 8 months. And so there is a tremendous need in the community for that particular service. I wanted to switch gears and go back to the tremendous announcement of the $2.5 billion Coast Guard investment. And in my region, obviously, Windsor-Essex is known for automotive manufacturing. We're also known for agriculture, but we happen to have a specialty shipbuilder named, you okay? Oh, sorry. Oh, that's me. A specialty shipbuilder named Hike Metals that has received $79 million on a search and rescue contract in 2015 and 2018, in addition to a lifeboat contract just a couple of years ago. And the owner of that company, Steve Ingram, said that the NSS, really revived and helped keep alive the shipbuilding industry in Canada, especially for the small shipyards and the small shipbuilders. Can you speak to the economic impact that we're seeing on smaller communities, smaller builders? And is there a way to maybe quantify the impact that it's had on job creation and on these small shipbuilders?
I'm afraid that is our time. Perhaps you can get back to us in writing or perhaps on Mr. Bain's round. Ms. Vinola, over to you for 2.5 minutes, please.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Chair. Madam Minister, to replace CP-140 Auroras, that's a Boeing P-3, the government, as was earlier said, made an official request to the U.S. to be able to purchase them because Boeing announced that if there had not been any other buyers for the P-8A, the production line would close. Now, by not going to call for tenders, by not having an in-depth analysis of what's available or possible, this eliminates the other players, including Bombardier, who have a faster, more independent device rather than the P-8A, and whose parts could be available for longer since the production line wouldn't be shut down as soon as this would be built. So you're talking about doing an in-depth analysis, but how come no approaches were made to any other companies other than Boeing?
Can give us some details on that process. As I've said, my information was that the P-8A was the only currently available aircraft that meets all of the operational requirements as specified by the Department of Defense. But perhaps, Simon, you can confirm that.
Oui, merci pour la question, Monsieur le Président.
Yes, thank you for the question. Just to clarify, the solicitation process for the replacement of the AURA CP-140 began with a request for information, which was quite extensive. It was completely open, and we received several answers. After analyzing the responses, as the Minister has indicated, there was a very specific conclusion, which was that the Boeing P-8 Poseidon was the only aircraft which at this time meets all of the operational needs as explained by the Canadian Armed Forces or the Air Force. So right now, the P-8 is the only aircraft meeting those needs. We're talking about operational needs including anti-submarine, control, command. Yes, thank you. But very briefly, please, the production line will shut down once the aircraft is built. So it's like buying a fancy Gutenberg printer and then have no replacement parts or very few after the very short term, and you'll end up being short of them. So that's what is of concern to me. Thank you.
Go ahead, please, for 2.5.
Thank you, Minister. Minister, I've raised this in the House of Commons about the increase in highly paid consultants, and especially Deloitte. They're over $200 million now in last fiscal year. PricewaterhouseCoopers, $100 million, $45 million to Accenture. Now, you talked about your plan to reduce spending on consulting and other professional services by 15% roughly in this fiscal year. is that on last fiscal year? Because that's a 400% increase since you got your government took power in 2015. Or is it on the 2015 amount?
As far as I know, it is related to spending in 2023, 2024 in relation to the previous year.
So, Minister, I mean, this is like not a significant cut considering you've had such a massive increase in outsourcing. I mean, 15% doesn't even take us back, a third of what your government has done in terms of increasing in reliance on highly paid consultants.
Well, I think we need to go back. Why do we use consultants at all? And we are carefully reviewing that, as you know. The President of the Treasury Board and I have been tasked to report back by the end of June. We've asked the Procurement Ombudsman to look at the practice as well. But what I can say in general is that we have used consultants when there is a lack of in-house capacity.
On behalf of not like all Canadians, that we want to see this come down significantly. Now, we know a lot of small rural communities are struggling to maintain their post offices because Canada Post postmaster provided model doesn't pay enough. The starting salary for these rural postmasters is less than $20 an hour. Moreover, these postmasters have to provide a space for the post office, for which Canada Post provides a stipend of only $250 per month. Postal service in rural Canada is a lifeline for many people. What concrete steps are you taking as a minister to support Canada Post to move towards a more sustainably financial model for rural post offices? You've heard my colleague, Mr. Bachrach from Skinner-Bulkley Valley, who's just in Atlan, doing a town hall on this. Can you speak about what you're going to do?
Thank you.
I'm sorry, you only have about 2 seconds, but perhaps yourself and your officials could get back to the committee in writing on this issue, or perhaps we can follow up in the next round after the minister leaves, because we'll have her officials after. We'll stay afterwards, Mr. Johns. Ms. Cusi, over to you, please.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, I just wanted to go back to the pay system, outlining that in the budget this year, there's only $52 million put aside for continuing work on the next generation, and that this amount is actually relatively small. For example, there was $63 million put aside in 2019, and this amount of $52 million is subsequently much less than what we've seen in previous years. So I just wanted to get a commitment from you that you are committed to moving on to the next generation pay system, just to verify this with you, because the numbers don't indicate that, and the number allocated in this year's budget doesn't indicate that.
As we've said, we're looking very closely at the pilots, the testing process, and a final conclusion will be the result of what we see. I would have thought perhaps a decrease in the budget would be appealing to you, but perhaps I can ask the President again to explain why the numbers are less.
Yeah, the funding we got in the budget this year allow us to get to the recommendation stage this year, carry the resources that we have assigned to the project, pay the firm. You mentioned Ceridian earlier. It's our main partner in there. Pay their fee until mid-year when the testing will be finishing. And then there was no mean for us to ask for funding for future years because the decision is not made about where this is going. So recommendation is critical. It's why we are pressing the process to get the final conclusion on what have we learned from the pilot and move toward an assessment of is there a possibility to move with this product in the future. So we have funding for 1 year. So this brings us to March 31st, 2024.
I would say, a decrease in the budget certainly isn't much use if our people aren't getting paid. So I certainly hope you'll continue to make that a priority. Minister, according to the 2023-2024 departmental plan, PSPC is considering strengthening its integrity regime. And I hope that this will include reviewing the ineligibility and suspension policy. I'm sure you're aware that we've recently been studying McKinsey. You were here on this. And given the moral and ethical breaches of this organization, it's astounding to me, actually, that McKinsey passed the integrity regime. I reviewed the regime quite extensively. Application 4, to me, seems to have far too many exemptions. But I'm particularly shocked that McKinsey passed Section 6, Part B, Roman numeral 5, where the supplier's been convicted of an offense. And I recognize in the States McKinsey was not convicted of an offense, but I certainly think a $600 million payout over 49 jurisdictions is something that should make the Canadian government look twice. In addition, Roman numeral 6 of the same Part B is trafficking in substance, and I would say that this definitely should have given pause to the Canadian government to reevaluate McKinsey. What the current integrity regime does exclude is human rights, the rule of law, and reckless disregard for the health and well-being of Canadians. And so I'm sure you're aware of the notice of motion that I've given, and I'll read it here today, although I'm not moving it, Chair, that the committee report to the House that in light of the government's announcement that it will join the class action lawsuit against McKinsey and Company for their role in the opioid crisis, and I'll add that your government voted against our motion, both in the House today, both of our motions, the committee calls on the government to reform the integrity regime associated with procurement in order to exclude companies that have shown reckless disregard for the health and well-being of Canadians, as well as for human rights and the rule of law, which throughout the testimony in this committee we have seen McKinsey and Company has consistently and repetitively done. What are your thoughts on this motion that I have on notice, Minister?
Thank you very much, Ms. Kusi. And first of all, I want to point out that we are actively reviewing the integrity regime, which was brought in by the previous Conservative government. We're looking at it both for areas where perhaps it's too stringent and areas where it's too lax. And you feel strongly that in this particular case, it is potentially too lax. We are clearly abiding by the current integrity regime. The questions that you're asking, the discussion at this committee is all input that we value. And I can assure you that we are taking the issue of the integrity regime very, very carefully. We're looking at it carefully. In fact, it was one of the things that the deputy mentioned to me when I was moved into this particular portfolio.
You also brought in Accountability Act 1, but that didn't make the government do anything in regards to the report from OGO for 2017, and that's why we have Bill C-290. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Ms. Kusi. Mr. Baines, to finish things off for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the Minister for joining us today, along with the department officials. I am going to pick up off of my colleague's question regarding the historic investment in the National Shipbuilding Strategy and expanding on the economic benefits that the NSS has created across the country. As you know, this investment is very important to us here in British Columbia and our marine sector. So if you could maybe talk a little bit about the economic benefits and the generational jobs this will create.
Mr. Baines, and it was certainly a pleasure to make the announcement on the East Coast. I know Minister Murray did the same out in BC. So we do have some numbers in terms of the economic benefit. The National Shipbuilding Strategy contracts awarded between 2012 and 2023 are estimated to contribute more than $25 billion or $2.1 billion annually to Canada's gross domestic product and create or maintain more than 18,800 jobs annually between those same years. So the record to date has been very, very successful. And I think with our announcement related to the small, medium-sized vessels, you can see that we're continuing in terms of pursuing this economic development, potentially for smaller communities on the Great Lakes, as MP Kuzmerchik alluded to as well. So this is of benefit across Canada. It is really heartening to see, I must say, having been at the announcement at Chantier Davy. The current mayor of Lévis had his 100-year-old father at that announcement. And, of course, that family have been involved in the shipbuilding industry now for generations and look forward to that continuing, obviously, for several more generations.
Thank you. And could you maybe tell us a little bit about direct or indirect jobs through the supply chain and how many jobs may be created, as a result of this in other areas?
I think we have a magnificent chart here. The deputy is showing me. Would you perhaps like to respond in some depth to the question?
No, I'd be happy to speak to a lot of the benefit from the national shipbuilding strategy flows to small and medium-sized enterprises. There's about $1.2 billion in small business contracts that have been awarded, and they have a distribution across the country. One company in Alberta, a number of companies in British Columbia totaling $265 million, $228 million in Newfoundland and Labrador. So the distribution of the national shipbuilding strategy across the country is an important aspect of the strategy in addition to the contracts directly with the large shipyards.
Thank you. And I'm going to shift a little bit. I know that our government's doing a lot of work in greening our government, which is important as we continue to see climate change and earth temperatures on the rise. I'm wondering what the federal government is doing to green its own infrastructure. Minister, if you could add to that.
SPC has been very actively involved in this particular area. So, as an example, this past year alone, PSPC reported a 57.3% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions from its own buildings compared to the 2005-2006 baseline. Moreover, we are expecting a decrease of 40% by 2025 by modernizing the heating and cooling system for up to 80 buildings in the National Capital Region through the Energy Services Acquisition Program. So we also have a target of over 82% greenhouse gas emissions reductions by 2025 and net zero carbon by 2030 for the federally owned portfolio. So we're definitely on track. It's obviously what we're looking at are buildings owned by PSPC, and we're very optimistic we'll meet our targets.
Thank you. And how close are we to achieving that goal, the levels that we're trying to meet?
We're really just on track. If you look at the trend lines and what we're doing, we should be able to achieve exactly what we intend to in meeting those targets.
You have time for a 4-second question, Mr. Baines.
I don't have a 4-second question, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks, Mr. Baines. Minister, that is your time with us. Thank you for joining us again. We'll excuse the minister, and then we'll get right back in it with her officials. Thanks. Mrs. Block for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And again, thank you for remaining with us for whatever time we have left with you to perhaps follow up on some of the information that we've been given. And I am going to return to 24 Sussex because there are still some questions in my mind remaining around the structure of the federal government, the NCC, perhaps even the FHBRO, which is the Federal Heritage Building Review Office, and ultimately who's responsible for what. So the residence is designated as a classified heritage building by the FHBRO. The minister said when I asked who owns 24 Sussex that the NCC does. If you go onto their website, it states that 24 Sussex is being managed by the National Capital Commission, that they have been doing this since 1988. So I guess I'm wondering if you can explain what I see as a discrepancy between owning and managing. And then if you could also perhaps tell us who is funding the abatement for 24 Sussex and ultimately perhaps the renovation should they occur. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Thank you for the question. I should note that I can't speak on behalf of the National Capital Commission, and they have the responsibility for the whole portfolio of official residences. They have commenced work on the abatement that is necessary, and this work is necessary under any future scenario for the property. dealing with hazardous situations, asbestos abatement, et cetera. So that work does need to be done. It's being done by the NCC under their direction. They have a capital fund for the maintenance of all official residences, so it'll be done in that regard. With respect to future decisions, there are some implications that go obviously be outside of the National Capital Commission. The Official Residence Act is an act of Parliament, so there's a legislative dimension. If that were ever to change, there'd be funding. That would a major project at 24 Sussex would be beyond the approved budgets of the National Capital Commission, so there'd need to be a funding source. So there are indeed some elements that go beyond the role of the NCC, and you've mentioned another one, the heritage responsibility. But the NCC they're the custodian, the responsible organization, and the owner of the property.
Thank you. I appreciate that answer. Perhaps you could clarify what you mean by there are funding requirements that go beyond what the NCC may be prepared to or be able to cover. Does that mean that the Government of Canada would provide funding to that project, and that ultimately it would be the taxpayers that are paying for the renovations at 24 Sussex?
The National Capital Commission has funding for the ongoing maintenance of its capital assets. They got a infusion in a one-time injection of $175 million over 10 years to address deferred maintenance for the entire suite of official residences, but they have not been funded to undertake large projects that were not part of their planned trajectory of work. So there would, I guess what I'm suggesting is that a major undertaking would not be within their current allocation of funding.
Well, I think I understand that. Where would the funding come from?
It would have to be budgeted for the NCC to undertake a significant program of work beyond the maintenance of the capital assets that they've been funded.
So they would budget for that. And is there a funding source that they need to?
It would have to come from the federal budget.
Federal budget.
It would be a budget decision
so
for the NCC.
ultimately, the taxpayer.
That would be. There's no other funding source that I'm aware of.
Right,
for
but
such a
that
project.
was a really roundabout way of getting to the answer to my question. I'm just trying to make it very clear for anybody who's watching this committee that ultimately 24 Sussex and any renovations that take place there will end up being funded by the taxpayer. And when you take a look at the fact that the National Capital Commission issued warnings to the government that delays would have disastrous effects, I think it behooves the government to act responsibly and to make decisions in a timely way to mitigate those disastrous effects, and to just be upfront and honest with Canadians about who owns this property ultimately and who will end up footing the bill should the decision be made to renovate 24 Sussex. I'm just going to put it on the record that I really appreciate our historical buildings. I'm sitting on the long-term vision and planning group for the renovation that's taking place at Center Block, and I'm pleased that we are working so hard to maintain the historical aspects of our parliamentary precinct. And so I am in no way making a statement of judgment on what should happen with 24 Sussex, but stories are now.
That is our time is blocked.
Thank you.
Mr. Shawari, please, for 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to welcome the department. Mr. Thompson, I was looking at the Minister in her opening remarks talked about the $4.3 billion estimate or the request, and the largest portion of that, you mentioned it was about $3.4 billion for property and infrastructure. Actually, looking at the 6 items that's at least in the Library of Parliament, I've noticed that is the only item that has consistently increased. On 2021, we were at about 2.8. Then we went to 2.6, 3.2, and now this year we are at 3.4, whereas all the other item has reduced. Can you tell me where are we spending, or where we're planning to spend this $3.4 billion? And if you could tie it into how, if any of that money is being used for some of the greening of the government and government building initiatives that we have, I would really appreciate it.
Indeed. Thank you for that question. There's a number of categories of projects, I would say, within that capital envelope. A very large one is the government's office portfolio, close to 7 million square meters of offices. We're doing an active review of, in light of all the changes in the workplace, an active review of our future needs for that space. But that space does require ongoing rejuvenation, renovation, replacement. So that's one big area. We have other capital projects as well in what we call engineering assets. So this would be work on bridges and on other assets across the country. We have the plan of work that was noted on the parliamentary precinct, which is a very large undertaking with multiple phases in the work. So those are some of the categories of work. I don't know if my CFO Wojo wants to add anything on the nature of the ups and downs on the capital envelope.
Sure. Thank you, Deputy. So there are a lot of things that we as a department, so as the Deputy mentioned, it varies from dams to bridges to office buildings. So, 875 Heron Road, West Memorial Building, which you may be familiar with, to Timiskaming Dam. So the variety of projects is quite diverse, and the timing of when capital is required for those projects does depend on this particular ramp up and ramp down of a particular project. So those numbers do vary quite a bit over time.
Are the focus of these investment on maintenance or on refurbishment, or is it on greening or a combination?
It is a combination. So we have some very large projects, like, for example, the ESAP project, which is something here in the National Capital Area, which is very focused around greening, which is to put in a centralized or upgrade the centralized heating and air conditioning facilities for the federal government, and it will have a huge benefit in reducing greenhouse emissions. So that's one example. There are other projects where we are refurbishing existing assets, like in particular on the office portfolio. And then we also have, Promenade du Portage is one that may be quite visible for any person who's crossing over the river. They will see a major construction project that is ongoing there. So that would be an example of a refurbishment. As well, we do have ongoing maintenance that is typically done to maintain the quality of the assets so they do not fall into disrepair.
From a percentage, what percentage of the $3.4 billion is focused on greening? Roughly. Not going to hold you to it. Just want to get a sense.
I'd be reluctant to put a number on the table. Okay. We could certainly look at that, but as my colleague Wojo was suggesting, greening is a core element of many projects that we're doing, particularly on the energy source. Like, that's the biggest bang for the buck, if you will. If we can change to lower carbon sources of energy for heating and cooling. We've got the district heating and cooling project in the National Capital Area, and buying renewable energy certificates across the country as well. So those are the biggest sources of greenhouse gas reductions in our investment portfolio right now.
All the time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Vignola for 2.5.
Merci.
Thank you. To begin, I don't have much time, but I would simply like to share with you my concern with the replacement of the BCP-140 Auroras, because now we're talking about the aircraft that's available now, but the production line is going to be shut down, and we know that. And we're not talking about tomorrow. We're not talking about what's coming and what's available in the short or medium term. Personally, I find this to be worrisome. Now, I'd like to ask Mr. Perron a question. When it comes to the cloud and cloud computing, there are various initiatives to improve services to partner departments. I hope that all departments are partners and that there are no competitors. What corporate services is PSPC thinking of authorizing, and who would be providing these cloud computing services? Thank you for the question. All departments can access this cloud computing. We pre-qualified 8 vendors in the country who have satisfied our security standards. Now, some departments would like to have services outside on these cloud platforms, which are very elastic. Other departments would like to use cloud computing platforms in order to build information services or information sharing services with external partners. So the needs are very varied. Now, the beauty of cloud computing is how elastic it is. It can be used during peak times without having to build monster-sized infrastructure and not having to pay for it. So if we see big growth in this, we had $3 million in spending a few years ago and nearly $100 million last year. So there are increases that are considerable, but needs are diverse. Several departments are using cloud computing very specifically. We have maybe 4 or 5% of our operations, of our applications running on cloud computing, maybe 8%. So it's highly variable. And of these 8 qualified companies, are we talking about supply arrangements? And are these arrangements for the next 80 years, as we've seen elsewhere? These are agreements which must be regularly reviewed, and there will be an updating process or a refresher process. We're currently engaging with industry to review the tools. Now, clearly, when a government department uses a vendor to install an application, you're not going to change every 2 or 3 years. You need to have a longer period of time. That doesn't mean no other vendors can enter the circle. Several governments across the globe have exclusivity arrangements in order to have better rates and better arrangements with vendors. And we'll have to seriously look at these options to determine who is offering us the best return on our investment when we use cloud computing services.
So thank you again for being here and for the important work you do. I guess through you, Mr. Chair, I would like to ask if you would be willing to table the staffing plan around the payments and accounts and the federal pay administration question I had earlier. The minister didn't have a chance to respond, and as well the postmaster provided model question that I had from Canada Post, and I'd like to ask for permission from the chair if the committee would support that request.
Colleagues? It is so.
Super. Thank you. Can you talk about what will be the process for assessing the 3% in cuts to public services proposed in Section 6.1 of the budget, and who will be consulted, informed, and I guess maybe what the priorities in terms of reference will be as well?
So thank you for the question. So these initiatives, as you know, were announced in the budget. They're being coordinated by the Treasury Board Secretariat, and each department will receive essentially its target for both the operating expenditure reduction and the one you mentioned earlier, Mr. Johns, on the reduction in professional services as well. So those are both being coordinated, and each department will receive its instructions essentially, or the targets for reductions in their own spending areas in those 2 areas.
Will Labour be consulted through this process?
With respect to professional services in particular?
Yeah, because I guess, what's the process for assessing which previously promised programs, will be delayed or canceled, and also, given that your government's commitment is cutting billions from contracting out and management consulting in the latter part of your answer, who's going to do this work moving forward? Is it coming back in-house? Where is the money in the budget for that? And was this work necessary, all along?
So, as the minister indicated, there is this review going on the use, including the McKinsey review, but has broader connections into the use of management consultants more broadly. Minister Jacek and Minister Fortier will be tabling their report on their findings of the internal review, but it will have some connections into how decisions are made and whether or not a given task should be contracted versus done in-house. These are value for money decisions that public servants make every day, right? How are we going to execute a particular task? There are a number of scenarios we talked about earlier where outside resources are needed if it's a specialized skill set that we don't have access to, a time-limited requirement. So
400% from highly paid consultants is quite outrageous, I think. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Johns. Ms. Kusi, please, for 5, and then we'll finish up with Ms. Thompson with 5.
Thank you, Chair. I'm wondering how will real property spending this year be affected with the full implementation of the common hybrid work model for the federal public service in March 2023? How will real property spending be affected given this new policy?
So thank you for that excellent question. This is a very dynamic area for all organizations to figure out what kind of office portfolio is needed for the future. We are renewing our 10-year plan for offices, taking into account the new hybrid work model. So that obviously reduces the overall requirement for office space, which is being taken into account in decisions that we make on lease renewals and what buildings in the Crown-owned portfolio do we retain versus dispose of. So obviously we see an opportunity for a fairly significant reduction in the coming years of the office space. There were opportunities even before the pandemic because we weren't using it optimally. So now add on to that the hybrid work models, we see a significant opportunity to consolidate office space and at the same time pursue greening, accessibility, and some of the other, so have a smaller footprint but more built for purpose. So that project is continuing with every department specifying their future needs.
Expand on that for the committee in terms of sort of what the plan looks like to first of all sort of determine the space which might be over what is required, and then sort of how the asset management of no longer required space looks like, and if I could go even sort of one step further, perhaps what like projected revenues might be, say 5, 10, 25 years out. If you could just give an overview as to sort of what that process looks like, please.
So we're midstream in that process. So I don't have the final results. There'll be a track of potential savings, obviously, from terminating leases that will be no longer required. There'll be some revenues from the disposal of assets that are no longer required. But there's also investments needed along the way. Even if you're disposing of a building, you sometimes need to invest in it to dispose of it to get the market value. So all that work is being undertaken in conjunction with departments who are specifying the actual floor space that they can best anticipate needing in the coming years. So that there's a lot of consolidation of departmental plans that's going on and coming together into an updated strategy. Our previous target was to reduce the portfolio by 40%. We now think we can reduce it closer to 50% as a target.
That is super exciting. Thank you. 50%. It was brought up previously, but I wanted to once again bring up the $2.3 billion for professional and special services, including contract personnel, because of course this is the second highest dollar value of any federal entity after the Department of National Defense and the second highest percentage of total spending. So why are professional and special services spending so high at PSPC comparative to other departments, please?
So thank you for that question. There's a wide range of activity in the department. So that speaks to some of the high numbers, in particular areas like construction, where, as you can appreciate, when a building is designed, take the parliamentary precinct project, we don't have in-house architects or designers that would do that work. That is, we do that on contract. We spoke earlier about ship retrofit and repair. Again, those are contracted services. We have other maintenance services for our real property portfolio. So there's a wide range of activity that we've, over many years, have done through contracts, not through in-house activities of government. So that's the main reason why you'll see PSPC as having generally a pretty high number of professional services contracts.
That you would hope to develop internally eventually, or in some cases it's not possible?
In many cases, the expertise is so specific
Sure.
and time limited that the best value is to get an outside expert in to do it. If you need a building designed or need particular expertise for an intensive period of work, the professional services contract is often the best way to go. But we do, as I say, every public servant ought to be doing that analysis as to where's the best value for any given task that needs to be done.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Ms. Cusi. Ms. Thompson, please, for 5.
Thank you. In April 2023, a report from the Standing Committee in National Defense recommended that government rapidly increase the pace of development and deployment of clean and renewable energy sources for the Canadian Arctic in order to provide the clean energy necessary to support NORAD modernization and to supply local energy infrastructure needs. Are you able to speak to how Defence Construction Canada has improved its green energy infrastructure expertise? And this clearly would have been done in recent years.
So thank you for that question. Unfortunately, Defence Construction Canada is an arm's length corporation with their own responsibilities, so I can't really speak to their efforts. I do know that they're active in this area. They're also making great strides in not only greening, but Indigenous procurement. They're one of the leading organizations in Indigenous contracting as well. But I can't comment beyond that unless my colleague Simon has anything to add on Defence Construction and the work in support of DND.
So thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. I don't have anything to add. Actually, all the relationships and the contracting through Defence Construction does not fall under the Defence and Marine portfolio at PSPC. We do monitor the projects with them because many of the infrastructure projects complement the equipment projects, but that's about the extent of our relationship. Thank you.
Thank you. And if I could just touch on the Indigenous contracts in the 2023-24 departmental plan, 8.3% of total contract values were awarded to Indigenous businesses, exceeding the mandatory target of 5%. Are you able to speak to the major contracts, what they are, the major contracts that were provided to Indigenous businesses?
So the work continues to find as many opportunities as we can for contracting with Indigenous organizations and to meet the 5% target. We have some very interesting success stories, including you just mentioned work in the north. Our NORAD sustainment, North Warning System sustainment contract, over $500 million was issued to an Indigenous-owned and operated company. So that's one example of a large opportunity that was found. The rest of the government continues. We have 3 phases of implementation of the reporting requirement on the 5%. We're in the midst of the first phase right now. Some departments, I must say, are doing better than others. There's some commodity areas where the government is more successful. Shared Services Canada is one organization that is doing quite well in the IT space in Indigenous procurement. I don't know, Sonny, if you want to add anything on that.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Because it's a growing business, the digital economy, we see more and more Indigenous business coming and making offering in this sector. So deliberately at Shared Service Canada, when we are establishing new procurement vehicle, in some area we are going to create what we call Indigenous set-aside, which will have a master vehicle to procure a certain type of products or service. with Canadian businesses or business in general. And we will have another stream that is specialized for Indigenous business, trying to leverage the capacity that is out there in the Indigenous groups in Canada to occupy that space. So we have been doing well. So 6.3% of the value in 21-22 and 7.8% of the funded contract. So this is progress. I think there is more potential than that. So we need to continue to make our procurement needs clear so there is more Indigenous business interested. We have also written to our 15 largest vendor and partner to let them know that we had some social objective that we wanted to achieve and invite them to think seriously about their own Indigenous procurement to create the industry out there that will support them and will become available for Canada to procure directly with Indigenous business. So in the area of procuring hardware equipment and professional services, we have seen growth in these areas with Indigenous business in Canada.
Thank you, and that's certainly very positive because we've heard so often in committee, the importance of moving to a digitalized government. So it's so helpful that you've exceeded the targets with Indigenous groups, which is incredibly important. In the 2023-2024 departmental plan, government has said it would like to improve results for Canadians by supporting departments and agencies to effectively implement outcome-based policies and program approaches in key priority areas such as public health and climate action. Can you describe some of these initiatives?
Very, very briefly, or perhaps in writing.
Well, Mr. Chair, I've spoken to the greening initiatives at some length already with the 57% reduction in our carbon footprint already, and the district heating and cooling in the National Capital Region and regional energy certificates. That's essentially the suite of greening investments that we have, and we're very active in other areas of making sure our buildings are accessible as well, meeting or exceeding the highest standards of accessibility. And working on other aspects of workplace inclusion and how buildings are designed. That's how I would summarize it.
Thanks, Mr. Thompson. Ms. Thompson, are you fine with that, or would you like anything tabled to the committee?
No, it's perfect. It's just nice to have it on the record, so thank you.
Thanks. Just before you go, thanks for being with us. A couple quick questions, if you don't mind. Ms. Vinola was asking about the P8, and we heard the comment at this time repeated often. I'm just curious if at this time contract was signed based on what the RCAF specs were, has been provided, when would the first plane be delivered to DND or to the RCAF?
That's a little bit speculative. I think it'd be hard, since we're in discussions on option analysis right now. It's hard to pin down.
It leads into a second question: is would it allow, if it's we talk at this time, it could be 2 years, 5 years before we could work with something to get a deal signed, plane produced, delivered to Canada. Would that time then allow other companies, perhaps a Bombardier or someone, I'm not pushing for them, but perhaps another company, to perhaps bid and have a project that would meet the specs?
I don't know if there's anything Simon wants to add, but I would just note that the requirements that we were given had some urgency in terms of needing an aircraft to meet those specifications now. And there's quite a difference between the off-the-shelf timeline associated with the P8 and a developmental solution.
If there is an urgency, when then would we expect, and when would the RCAF expect to receive the P8 if it is as urgent as you just commented?
Well, it is an existing aircraft in production. I don't know, Simon, if there's anything we can add for the committee's benefit on the availability of that aircraft.
The only thing I would add, Mr. Chair, would be that this is part of the information gathering process that we're conducting now. So your second question there about knowing if a developmental option would be faster than the current option. This is the request for information, the information gathering process that we're doing at this time. So to back up my Deputy Minister's comment there, it remains quite a bit speculative, and we're just making sure right now we have all the information to make sure that the right decision can be put forward. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm not sure you answered it, but I appreciate that. We are going to excuse you. Thank you for joining us. Colleagues, we're going to suspend to allow them to leave. We do have to get to the estimates votes. It should not take that long. I'm going to suggest we suspend for about 2 minutes to allow these folks to leave.
Chair.
And then I'll accept if we can have unanimous consent to continue. Mr. Barrett?
I just see that there's bells. Just maybe we forego the suspension and just carry on.
We probably can. Oh yeah, we probably can if you don't mind. It's relatively informal. Colleagues, if you're fine, then if I have consent, then we will continue till 5 minutes before the bells are before the votes due to start. Wonderful. So we're going to go right to the votes. Does the committee wish to vote on the main estimates now?
Yes.
Wonderful. As I mentioned, we are going to, and we received consent before, we will group the departments together. So the first one, number 1, shall vote 1C under the Canada Post Corporation carry.
Division.
On division?
I answered everything. Shall it?
Just making sure you're clear. Right. Shall vote 1 under the Canada School Public Service carry. On division, wonderful. Shall vote 1 under the Canadian Intergovernmental Conference Secretary carry.
Division.
On division it is. Shall vote 1 under the Canadian Transport Accident Investigation and Safety Board carry.
On division.
On division, bear with me 2 seconds, please. Right. Fifth one, shall votes 1 and 5 under the Department of Public Works and Government Services carry. Number 6, shall votes 1 and 5 under National Capital Commission carry. Right. Number 7, shall vote 1 under the Office of the Governor General's Secretary carry.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I will be moving a motion to reduce the funding allocated to the Office of the Governor General. I will just explain. Canadians are currently facing an inflation crisis, which has been fueled by this government's out-of-control spending. Canadians are struggling to keep up with the rising cost of living because of this Liberal inflationary crisis and the Liberal carbon tax. With a second tax soon to be added, it will become even harder for them to keep up. With record levels of inflation, home prices doubling, mortgage rates and rental prices skyrocketing, the cost of living is getting out of control. As I said earlier today, 1.5 million Canadians are visiting food banks on a monthly basis, and 1 in 5 Canadians are skipping meals because food is too expensive. Just this week, Chair, the food bank in Saskatoon held a food drive as the usage is higher than it's ever been, with 24,000 people. That's about the seating capacity of Madison Square Garden accessing food monthly. Given this current situation, reports of irresponsible spending by the Office of the Governor General have caused outrage. The Governor General charged taxpayers for extravagant in-flight catering when she traveled to the Middle East. At this very committee, we heard about hundreds of dollars for lemon and lime slices, an absurd cost that taxpayers had to foot the bill for. The Governor General has shown a lack of respect for taxpayers, the Canadians which she is meant to represent, and the job for which she is tasked has become a means to expense an extravagant lifestyle. The Governor General has billed almost $40,000 in clothing expenses to taxpayers since taking office. As my colleague, the member for Edmonton West, stated, MPs pay for their own tuxedos. I would expect any business-style clothing, shoes, T-shirts, anything they should pay with their own very, very, very well-compensated salary. The Governor General is paid an annual salary of $351,000, and this salary has been increased by $48,000, almost $49,000 over the last 5 years. The Governor General's extravagance is obviously something that Canadians find unacceptable and we as members of Parliament must act to curtail this outrageous extravagance. As the Minister of Canadian Heritage said, and I quote, "People expect us to manage their money with transparency. That obviously includes members and senators, the government, and the Governor-General." That is why I would like to move the following motion: that vote 1, under office of the Governor-General Secretary, in the amount of $20,677,200,000, less the amount of $5,169,300,000 granted in interim supply, be reduced by $136,986,031 to $15,370,913.69.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Block. Just to clarify, there's $20,677,200, 5,169,300 has already been approved, granted in the interim supply. Mr. Johns?
First, I appreciate my colleague for bringing forward this motion. We've all got similar concerns, and which is why we're doing a study actually on it. We're at 8 studies, I think, or are we at 9? Maybe. Maybe it feels like it. So I guess my concern is that we're now getting motions here at committee that should be in the study so that we can make really good recommendations. And I think some of those recommendations should be about how certainly the Governor General spending taxpayers' dollars. But my concern is now we're getting a lot of motions preempting the very studies that we're doing. And I'm not saying that I'm opposed to them at all. In fact, I'd like to learn more. Like first, my colleague that moved this motion, I mean, they were in government. Stephen Harper appointed the Honourable David Johnston not once but twice, and didn't do this cut. So I'd like to know why that didn't happen under the Conservative government, and how come this number? Like, where did this arbitrary number come from? I'd like to understand that. And shouldn't this be something that should be included in the study so that we can make some good policy decisions and recommendations moving forward? That's something that I'd like to just hear from my colleague, who I respect a lot, just some answers on that. But I do appreciate her bringing this forward.
Ms. Vignola?
Merci, excusez-moi.
Thank you. I fully agree. Nobody here is going to doubt the fact that if it were up to me, we could establish a republic that had no governor general related to the monarchy. But the Constitution seems to be sacrosanct. And so if my math is correct, and my colleagues could confirm this, the fund that I'm talking about that seems to be the total of meals of the flight to the Middle East and the total of clothes. Am I mistaken? So 30 seconds of math, and I've done it. So yes, we consider this to be abusive. $40,000 worth of clothes and $350,000 a year salary. I think you can afford clothes if you absolutely want to have $40,000 worth of clothing. We don't earn that, and we pay for our own clothes. At one time there were 6 of us in the house with $70,000 earnings in a year, and we paid for our own clothes. So if you're earning $350,000, I don't think it's a problem.
Thank you. Can we vote, colleagues? Oh, sorry, Mr. Housefather, I didn't see you there.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we all have our own views about the Governor General, and I don't, in my view, really think my feeling in the long run is that much different than Ms. Vignola's in terms of what I would rather see as a head of government in Canada. But right now we have a Governor General, and we have a monarchy, and we have people in these positions. There is a budget allocated for these positions, And the fact that we would cut some undetermined amount or an amount as Ms. Block has laid out in her motion doesn't mean that money won't be used for clothes, right? 142,000 or whatever the amount could be used to cut staff positions. It could be used for anything else. I don't know that there's specific line items in the budget we received. I don't believe there are related to the Governor General. We're not just cutting a clothing line item. This is simply a proposal to arbitrarily cut an amount in a budget without having studied this properly and understanding what that money is specifically to be used to do. So, would it mean the Governor General would just do one less trip in the year, but all the other trips would be the same amount of spending as previously, as opposed to cutting the spending on all trips in the way the committee is suggesting in our report? I mean, what we should be doing is properly finishing our Governor's General report, making recommendations that for as long as we have a Governor General, this is the way she should travel. We could certainly, and I would support a line in the report saying it shouldn't be used for clothing allowances, personally. But I don't think that arbitrarily chopping up figures in a budget without having looked at it from a line item point of view and cut line items is the way to go. So given that we haven't even discussed this before the meeting, that Ms. Block chose not to socialize this motion with Liberal members of this committee before the meeting, which could have been done very, very easily, I certainly won't be supporting this motion personally. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Mr. Hausfather. Mr. Johns?
Well, I have another question that I'm hoping Ms. Block can help me with. Like, in 2012, the Governor General was paid $137,939 a year, and that salary doubled the next year to $270,602. So while we're having discussions about cutting the Governor General, why did we double the pay to the Governor General in that period of time, or expend it? Was it the transfer, or maybe some explanation of that?
Ms. Block, but something 10 years ago is not relevant to today's estimates that we're voting on.
When you were making
I'll turn it to
decisions
Ms.
about
Block.
cutting and increasing, I'd like to know how these decisions were made. And Mr. Chair, I'll say this. The average, was around $125,000 for several years, and then suddenly the Conservative government decided to double David Johnson's salary, the Governor General at the time, from 2012 to 2013, by like $130,000, like doubling his pay. Like, that's absurd too, right? Like, and I think we should get back to the study, figure out what we're doing. And I think we're probably a lot more on the same page here than we're not, in figuring out what our plan is. But we need to do the study. Like, let's get a study done. One study. Maybe we can just finish this study.
Ms. Block, then Mr. Kuzmierczuk.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Look, this is the purpose of the Government and Estimates Committee. It's the purpose to be studying the mains, reviewing them, and then making a decision. That is our job, and we don't need a study to determine whether or not we believe that the estimates should be reduced. That's really the only thing we can do. We can't increase. We can keep the budget the same, or we can reduce it. We've done the study. We're at the point of looking at recommendations. So we already know what has been spent on in an extravagant way. So I'm just hoping that my motion gets passed by this committee, because that's our job, is to hold departments accountable, and this is one way we can do it.
100%. My mic's not working. Go ahead, Mr. Kuzmierczuk.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, I'm in full agreement with the argument that was made by Mr. Johns, by my colleague, in the sense that, again, even though we share certain sentiments about obviously the cost overruns, and we have significant concerns and questions about some of the expenditures of the Governor General, at the end of the day, we're putting the cart before the horse here. We need to do a study. we need to complete the conclusions and the recommendations of the study that's before us. I mean, that study is half finished. We still have work to do. We haven't come up with all the recommendations. We haven't approved it. There's much to be discussed. And again, I have to say, I mean, I just heard a couple seconds ago my colleague across the way saying that we don't need a study. I mean, it's the same argument that underlines the argument that we don't need a briefing on national security to understand national security. I mean, this is how you govern, is you look at facts, you look at you get briefings, you look at facts, you conduct studies, and you make an informed decision based on the information that you've gathered and the debates that you've held. And so I don't quite understand, coming in with a motion, again, as my colleague said, without even giving the Liberal side even a heads up that this motion was coming forward. That's not collaboration. That's not working together. That's not trying to get to the bottom of things. That's not trying to make an informed decision. And so, again, for that matter, I fully support what Mr. Johns has brought forward. Once again, bringing forward a pragmatic, responsible suggestion, which is let's complete the study first, and then let's talk about what are the next steps in terms of what rules and frameworks we need to change for the operation of the Governor General's office. So I'll be voting against.
Mr. Barrett?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So a couple things I'll cover off. I disagree respectfully with my colleague from the bloc with respect to the office of Governor General and us not transitioning to a republic, but I'm pleased that she seems to have found some consensus with her colleague from Mount Royal, who seems to be looking for that transition to happen. I'm quite pleased with the established practices that we have, and proud to be part of the Commonwealth and God save the King. That being said, I think that the Governor General could save some money, and it's important that we pay attention to the amount with respect to Mr. Housefather's comments that the Governor General didn't spend. And so there was, to my reading, hundreds of thousands of dollars, more than $750,000 in lapsed funding from the Governor General's office. We have the ability to make a reduction of $136,986.31 because that's an amount that was identified through the work of this committee as excess and luxuries that are incompatible with the expectations of Canadians. And we don't need to produce a study on that. And while, with all due respect, I appreciate I appreciate the history lesson from Mr. Johns on what happened more than 10 years ago. We've had a Liberal government for 8 years, and if the NDP wants to effectively, by voting against this motion, support luxury and excess for the Governor General by having an extra $136,986.31 for champagne and caviar, well, that's certainly their prerogative. But I wasn't here in 2012. I'm here in 2023, and I'm going to vote to reduce the budget by $136,986.31 because what we've seen from her office is not consistent with what's acceptable when Canadians are facing the hardships that they're facing.
Thanks, Mr. Barrett. Mr. Housefather?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm glad that my friend Mr. Barrett takes such notice of my words. All that I said was that my preference would be eventually to have a Canadian head of state. It's not that I think we can amend the Constitution now or that it should be a priority, but I would rather have a Canadian head of state one day. It's just my view. And when it comes to attacking the institutions of the monarchy and the Governor General, well, it's sort of this reduction in budget with no real explanation that to me is a very insensitive way of treating the current Governor General, because essentially it's an attack on her, and it's an attack on her spending. It's an attack on how she's been doing things. So I again believe this committee is able to have a proper report that doesn't arbitrarily take away funds, which we don't understand why. I mean, I was a mayor and a councillor for many years, and we never would look at a budget and not have any idea of the line breakdown of a budget and have a member show up at the last minute in a meeting without having socialized it with other council members and ask for monies to be taken away. We've done no study of the Governor General's budget. Specifically, I don't recall one question being asked about this amount today, even. And I just don't think that it's the right way to go about it. We should finish our report properly. And I'm perfectly prepared to say again in the report that the Governor General shouldn't have a clothing allowance, that the salary of the Governor General should generally cover clothing. And I believe we should be making recommendations related to all Governor General travel and go through all of the things and the points that we set out in our study and properly line them up in a report, which again, we never seem to get to because, different members bring up motions constantly to have new studies about everything. We never finish anything. So in the end, Mr. Chair, I again don't think this is the right way to go about this type of a motion, in my personal view. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Johns?
A couple of things. First, I know Mr. Barrett doesn't want me to go back 10 years and that he wasn't here, but his leader was actually here. In fact, he was in cabinet when they doubled the pay to the Governor General. So, yeah, I think it is relevant in that we have a conversation about how we do things. And I think I'm feeling a little blindsided about this too. It's like Mr. Housefather said, you cut a certain amount and there's no details about, is this going to be about travel? Is this going to be staff? Is this going to be about clothing or whatever expenses that come in? I'm open to the conversation. I want to have this conversation. Like Mr. Housefather, I also sat in local government. And even at the local government level, you actually look at things, you do a report with your staff, you come back, and then you make decisions instead of arbitrarily deciding that this certain amount of money that could not do what we actually want to do. Like if we want to cut in certain areas, then let's do that, but let's do it right. So we've got a study we're doing that we're not doing, right? Instead, we're constantly reacting. 8 studies, Mr. Chair. We have not completed a single study. It's 2 years.
I'm going to interrupt you, Mr. Johns, because I'm going to adjourn.
2 years.
Yeah. I'm going to adjourn because we have to go vote. I will.
Bravo, Mr. Chair.
I will bring up the fact if you look at past Ogo,
language.
you see that your previous colleagues did very similar in reducing the estimates. That is our role. But anyways, we are adjourned. I'm disappointed we did not get to a vote because that is our job in this committee. But that is life. We are adjourning so we can go vote, and the estimates will be deemed reported tomorrow.